Inside of today's video, we're going to be taking a look at all things Doug. So that's going to be his best counters, matchups, his best game modes, his best build, and a lot of pro tips as well. So Doug is being released in 2 days, but you might be watching this when he's actually released as well. I'll be doing a double upload on his release as always, so make sure you subscribe for that one. Let's jump into it. Okay, so jumping into the first thing, then we're going to be taking a look at his best build. We've already briefly gone over things in another video, but literally going to define what his best build is. So both gadgets are actually pretty good. I think it just depends on the strategy you go with. I think if you just go with randoms and or just on a random map, you probably want the extra damage because it doesn't really deal a lot of damage. Of course, 1,800 isn't really a lot, and it does scale. So with this gadget, you can deal like 3,600 damage, which he definitely needs. He really lacks the DPS. Whilst you can switch to this gadget if you're looking to build like a synergy composition. I feel like Doug's going to be a really good support brawler. He's not going to be good by himself, so you could see a lot of value out of this one as well. I think it's going to be very matchup dependent. And then the next one, I think this 20% star power should be better, but I was testing it out as well. It doesn't really offer too much healing potential, but still a little bit of extra healing is pretty nice when you do attack. You know, that might change a few interactions. So I think I'll be using this one, but with an extra 3-second movement speed. Might be the better one, maybe if there's a certain game mode where, you know, like Showdown, for example, might be good for that extra 3 seconds, but I think self-service is going to be better overall. And then in terms of gears, then I think you can't go wrong with speed, damage, and also the health gear. I mean, maybe in some scenarios you might even want to run the shield, but I think you get the most value out of the first 3 gears. Okay, so now we're going to be ranking Doug in every single game mode, saying whether he's going to be strong or not. So we're going to be starting off with gem grab. So for gem grab, I feel like he has some decent like characteristics. The fact that his super, of course, can resurrect you, which is going to be pretty good in gem grab, especially if you've got gems. Can be good in some scenarios, but for me, I don't think he's going to be the strongest, mainly because of the maps. The maps don't really favor him too much, and I think he's in that awkward position where he is a support brawler, but he can't really be a mid, right, because he has no range. I mean, weirdly enough, he could be mid in some maps like Double Swoosh, for example, or even on maps, I'm trying to think of other maps like Gem 4, where you can, of course, run into the mid and then keep your mid healed up as well. But overall, I think because of the maps and just overall, it doesn't really fit gem grab in a sense. I think it's probably going to be around like the C tier in gem grab. With heist, it's going to be really difficult for Doug to really deal any damage. You can kind of compare him to Jackie, but worse in a sense, because you don't really need too much support in a game mode like heist. A lot of it is just pure DPS brawlers, and of course he has 0 DPS, so for sure, in my opinion, he's going to be F tier in heist. So for bounty, I feel like Doug's really going to struggle because there's a lot of maps in the game where he will just get outranged and outclassed a lot of the time. His super does have the potential to be good in some turnaround moments, but because he can't shoot it through walls, I think he's going to be really weak. So for me, he's probably going to be F tier. He might have the odd occasion where he might be good on maps, I don't know, really passive maps, maybe like Dry Season, or bushy maps like Infinite Doom and Canal Grande. But overall, I feel like it's going to be pretty underwhelming. So next up, we have Brawl. So Brawl is a good game mode in the sense that a lot of brawlers that are weak are good in Brawl because you've got really bushy maps, and just overall, I feel like you have better synergy in this 3v3 game mode. So I think this will be one of Doug's best game modes. I'm thinking like B tier or A tier for him, mainly because of sneaky fields. You also have the likes of center stage as well. There's a couple of maps where tanks just really thrive. So Doug's going to be good in that sense. But again, I'm a little bit scared because I feel like in Brawl, there's a lot of assassins, and that could actually be one of Doug's biggest weaknesses. So for me, I'm kind of unsure, but I would say safe to presume like a B or A. Next up, we have Hot Zone. So for Hot Zone, I think, again, the maps really don't really favor him in terms of a lot of the competitive maps, especially like Ring of Fire and Dueling Beetles. Tanks are just never played it. So it's going to be really hard for him to really make an impact on the map because it takes him 5 shots to get his super. It's going to be incredibly difficult. So for me, probably D tier or even F tier in Hot Zone. And for the final 3v3 mode, we have Knockout. So Knockout, I actually think is going to be one of his stronger game modes, mainly because of a late game strategy. I think he has potential to be an A tier, maybe even S tier brawler. I know in the sense that I don't think Doug's going to be the strongest, but he has the most potential in this game mode, mainly because a lot of times in the current Knockout meta is that people wait for the gas to close in, and I think just the limited range will of course favor him in that department. If you're really passive and wait for the gas to close in, you're obviously going to hit more shots there, and if you're able to build up your super, that's a big if in a game mode like Knockout. You're able to, of course, cycle it when the gas closes in, and it's going to be really painful for the opponents to kill you. So I think Knockout is going to be his best game mode. And lastly, in terms of all the game modes I'm going to cover, it is Showdown. So I know a lot of you guys on my channel probably don't like Showdown, but I think it's actually going to be Doug's best mode. mainly because of his super, right? With the amount of teaming right now, even above like 700 trophies, there's just teaming everywhere, so you're going to get your super a lot of the time. And of course, once the gas closes in, there's so much survivability with Doug. I feel like it's going to be Cordelius all over again. It's going to be like 8-bit extra life all over again. So I think Doug is going to be incredibly broken in the spinning showdown meta. Okay, so now we're going to be looking into his best matchups overall, in my opinion. So going into things, Doug is a brawler that doesn't really have a lot of DPS, and he is a healing brawler. So for me, his best matchups are probably going to be brawlers that have low DPS themselves. So you can kind of compare Doug to another healer, you know, like Pam, for example, or Poco in that sense, who they kind of counter. That's probably similar to Doug. So first one is going to be Stu. So Stu, of course, can keep distance from Doug pretty well, but I just think overall, you know, for example, if you're playing an objective game mode like Hot Zone, a Doug could be a good counter to a brawler like Stu in that sense. That's what I'm kind of talking about there. But I think overall in the 1v1 matchup, Stu should be able to win that still, weirdly enough. The next, Mr. P. So again, you're trying to compare, just like how I did with Willow and Barley, it's the same kind of with Doug and Jackie. So Mr. P is going to be a fantastic matchup for Doug. Just the same with Jackie, just being able to shoot around the walls, of course, to destroy Mr. P with a couple of shots, I think should be pretty easy. And the next, 3 other low DPS brawlers, the likes of Sandy, Sprout, and Gus. So these are going to be brawlers that just don't deal with damage. You know, Sandy, for example, is really hurting in the current meta, where people can just overrun a Sandy easily, and I think Doug should be able to do that pretty simply as well. There's no kind of big DPS thing about Sandy, you know, he hasn't got like a Shelly super to destroy Doug, so Doug should be able to use his super and eventually win that matchup. Same with Sprout as well. Sprout can keep his distance, but there's a lot of HP on the side of Doug, so Sprout can't really deal with that. And then Gus as well, you know, Gus could get 3 supers from Doug, but overall it's going to take him like 6-7 shots to take down Doug in the end. So those are his best matchups. Okay, so now jumping into the best counters to Doug right now. I think pretty much every brawler is going to counter Doug. I may be heavily underrating him. If you guys might have some good suggestions in terms of how strong he's going to be, but for me, I think he's going to be pretty weak. So everyone's going to counter him basically. I think brawlers like B are going to be really good shutdown. It's going to be a really good shutdown to Doug because, of course, he doesn't have the range, and if B can keep distance and keep slowing him, it's going to be really easy to target. Same with Crow as well, and also you've got that kind of anti-healing debuff with Crow, so the star power is going to really affect Doug there, and just overall his healing capabilities to his teammates, it's going to be pretty toxic in that sense. And I pretty much think every single assassin is going to absolutely destroy Doug in a 1v1. Of course, Doug can switch gadget and use one with double DPS, but I think if you know the mechanics of Doug, you can kind of stay on the grasp of his range, and he's going to be dealing like 1,000 damage, whereas if you're, for example, even like a Buzz or someone like that, you can typically stay not on completely the center of Doug, and you're going to destroy him. And even if you want to get up close to Doug with like a Daryl roll on top of him, a Cole super, there's no way that he can interrupt or push you back. So I think assassins are going to have an absolute field day on Doug overall. I think it's going to be pretty hard to find any sort of way Doug's going to thrive in this meta, to be honest. And that's going to lean on to my next point on how strong I think Doug is going to be. So for me, in my opinion, I'm actually going to put Doug as like a D tier brawler. Could honestly be like an F tier brawler once people have got over like the honeymoon period of trying him out, testing him out, and realizing that it's actually really hard to get his super 5 hits. And I feel like it's going to be in the same period as Willow, like exactly the same, maybe like C, D tier. For me, I'm going to really underrate him, probably harshly. F tier, just because, again, like the super can't shoot through a wall, just like how Gus, on first glance, I think, couldn't shoot his super through a wall. So I imagine they're going to change that probably to get a little bit more versatility out of its super. But I think they're just really scared of releasing a brawler like Doug, right? He's got the ability to revive him and his teammates. Maybe making it shoot through walls is a bit too broken. They're probably just testing things out and don't want to release a brawler like this too broken. But for me, I think it's going to be really underwhelming. Let me know what you think of Doug in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.